if you have a camera, understand your gear and work with your gear, it will do wonders for you. If you understand how to operate your camera, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like driving a car. Once you know how it works, you forget about the technical part and then you just focus on what is in front of you.
Shutter Stories, a Canon podcast.
Hi, I'm Ilvy Njiokiktjien, a Canon ambassador and your host for today, and welcome to the latest episode of Shutter Stories, a Canon podcast. As the official imaging supplier of the Rugby World Cup 2023, we are celebrating the diversity in sports photography, and today I'll be joined by two photographers passionate about sports. It's Isabel and Phill and my fellow Canon ambassador Phill Magakoe. Isabel is a Spanish sports photographer whose roots are in news photography. Her family's love for Real Madrid Football Club transcended into her working life, seeing her photographing West Ham United games, players, matches and fans. But she didn't stop there and is now a familiar face in many of the world's most famous tennis arenas, having shot the Madrid Open as well as Wimbledon. Phill is a South African photojournalist who started shooting sports as part of his first job in a newsroom, and thanks to his passion for football and rugby, he never stopped. His work has been featured in publications such as the New York Times and Le Monde, and he is a vast contributor to international wire service AFP. Isabel, Phill, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi, nice to be here.
Thanks so much for being here, both of you. I'm really happy and very excited for today's episode. So there is a lot of ground to cover in today's chat, but before we get into it, could you maybe tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves? And Isabel, let's start with you. Can you maybe tell me what first attracted you to the world of sports photography?
Well, as you say before, my family has a big background with Real Madrid. I was never really good at playing sport, but I did grew up watching them. And yeah, they were quite hardcore Madrid fans. And it was always a family thing, gathering together to watch the Real Madrid games. So I always have it very close to my heart. And then when I started working in a local newspaper, as a news photographer, it happened that the local team was West Ham. So even though it wasn't part of my task to do, I pushed to my colleagues to take me in and kind of start to get a bit addicted into going to the games every weekend and just love the excitement of the whole sport.
And then instead of playing, Instead
of playing, I'm better at dancing. Dancing is more my thing than playing sports.
and then photographing the sports. This sounds like a perfect combination. And Phill, how about you? You're not purely a sports photographer. I know your work quite well. So you're predominantly actually a photojournalist like I am. And how did you end up shooting the Springboks? And for the listeners, you might want to explain who the Springboks are.
The Springboks is the South African national rugby team. It's referred to it as the Springboks. Look, for me, it started with the grassroots. I started with covering school sports for my local publication. And it elevated from there, where I then got to cover the local South African rugby professional leagues. And once I got quite good at that and had the confidence of the editors, I then was elevated to cover the Super Rugby. I'm not quite sure if you are familiar with the Super Rugby. It was a professional rugby tournament between teams from South Africa, New Zealand and Australia. So I covered that a lot. And from there, Again, once I got the confidence of the editors, they then allowed me to cover international test matches, with the likes of South Africa, New Zealand again, and the more recent British and Irish Lions. So for me, really, it started with the grassroots with school sports rugby.
And then you ended up at the Springboks. Like you are now in the top of the top.
Yeah, look, I do. I cover a lot of Springbok events. I mean, we just finished doing a tour of Australia not so long ago, and also the New Zealand. So that's what I predominantly do now.
Beautiful. So I have a question for both of you, because both of you started out, as you mentioned, as news photographers, and I can imagine being a news photographer that might help you on the sports field. What are some of the things that you took from your experience as a photojournalist to the sports field?
I think the principles will be the same. Like you're trying to catch an action, something that's happening, and it's gonna make a reaction on the public's eye, and being observant, being prepared ahead, knowing what you're doing ahead of going to the job. I think that kind of relies to news as it could relate to sports. And apart from the action, also like the context where the action is happening, it really affects also the image that you will find. So I think it really helps coming from a news background, taking into sports field.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, with me, started with news photography for a local publication. I found that news is very unpredictable and had to adapt to capture action as it happens. And for me, that became an attribute to cover sports. So I use that ability to capture quality images and to capture action as it unfolds.
I can imagine. I mean, I know the quickness of photojournalism from my own career. You have to be quick and you have to prepare well and so on. And you mentioned the unpredictability, Phil. How do you kind of prepare?
It's the first things first. It's knowing the sport, and understanding the events of the day, There might be a certain rivalry, there might be a certain incident that happened prior, because usually teams play away, home and away, and understanding all of that and following the game really assists you in preparing for sport, so that you can get the best image possible out of that particular event.
And Isabel, for you?
Yeah, well, I think you need to know what's the talk of the day on that week, and get to know a bit the players that you're going to shoot, what are their weaknesses, are their strengths, and who they pair with, this player and this player, they usually work together better and they pass the ball, or, this manager has been on the news for this reason, and just knowing to know the people you're going to shoot, even you don't have any control of what they're going to do, but kind of be slightly ahead of what they might come after.
And what is the work environment like on the sports field?
It feels like a day out, really. Like you go, as I say, you go with plenty of time. It could be like 4 or 5 hours, depending on the game of the week. If it's like a final, semi, or like a normal weekly game. So you go like there 5 hours before, queue with your mates and have a bit of a chat before getting into the field. And usually it's kind of the same faces, so it's quite nice to see each other. There's a bit of normally a lunch before the game, so you have time to catch up with them. So it's quite a nice atmosphere, and then you're prepared and full of energy for the game. I usually love the preview, like going outside and seeing the local people or everybody who comes to see the game, and take pictures of that. The atmosphere is, as a photojournalist too, I love the kind of the context of that part of the more like documenting the game before the game.
Yeah, and not just the things that are happening on the field.
Not just the action, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, understand. And Phil, the atmosphere, how would you describe that? Is it very competitive?
Look, I would agree with Isabel. That's more or less also what I do. I would, as soon as I arrive at the stadium, I don't necessarily just walk into the pitch and just wait for the match to start. There's a lot to do. Walk around the stadium and, cover the atmosphere, cover the ambience. And I get to really be in tune with the fans. I get to really, for example, if there's a test match between South Africa and Australia, I'll look out for that one Aussie odd fan that is, in the stands and whatnot. So it's really great,
Yeah, it sounds like I've only photographed sports once. I really was really bad. I'll never do it again.
No,
but I must say,
I'm sure you were not. No,
no. I'll tell you, I really was. Phil, it was actually at the World Cup in South Africa. No,
2010,
I really
yes.
decided. 2010, I decided to never do it again because I actually wasn't that good. But I did love the atmosphere. Also, the atmosphere between colleagues and all the players. It did have a lot of, atmosphere to it that really makes you stay awake next to the field. It's so energizing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's quite contagious,
It is.
isn't it?
It was.
I feel like it's contagious. The vibrance of the people, especially when it's like nations playing each other, it's like they all come together. Like when I went to the World Cup this summer in Australia, I was like so like happy and full of contagious energy from these people shouting and dancing before the game.
Yes, exactly. The energy is so up that, yeah, that's the perfect work environment actually to really perform. So I think the way I know sports photography and what I'm hearing for you, it seems like no 2 days are the same. Is that one of the reasons you two got into this industry?
Well, yes, I could say yes because my office, it's out there in the streets, it's out there in the field. It's different every time. Every sporting event is different. You could cover the same sporting code, but if you are in a stadium in another area, it's different to that. So it's quite exciting covering something that you don't particularly know how it will unfold, and having the photojournalistic background, it then tends to be a bit easy to capture because you are steadfast, you understand how action works, you understand, you are always ready to capture what other people would not necessarily capture.
Yeah. And Isabel?
Yeah, I think that's the fun of the job, that there's no 2 days the same. As same as news, like you can do the same thing twice and it will never be the same because you never know where the player is gonna shoot from, never know where he's gonna celebrate, which it could be the more frustrating thing because you think you're in the best corner, but then suddenly he goes to the opposite corner and it's like, oh my God. And then I had to throw everything, try to run, but maybe, it's also unpredictable and fun. That's the challenge of the job.
And you're waiting for the guy to run towards you and then you just have his back. Oh.
And then yeah, but sometimes even that works. You never know. Like sometimes even the back of the player celebrating with his mates might work better as well. And reaction of the public behind you is quite unpredictable. You might think you're in a bad spot. Like that happened to me on the final with Spain England. I was like, oh my God, I wasn't happy with my position. And then final whistle, they all come together in front of me more or less on the same line spot, and they all pile together, all the players piling up together one into each other, and like it was so crazy because I'm from Spain and England did very well and I was through war supporting England, but okay, in Spain, England, it was amazing.
That's amazing. Well deserved. That's the only place they should have celebrated that. That's perfect. So, Phil, would you say there are any, I'm curious about that as well, specific players maybe that you've enjoyed shooting or that you have a better contact with, or shots that you're really proud of? What are the pivotal moments that really stand out in your career?
There's really this one particular moment that I captured, which, that picture is definitely one of my ultimate favorite pictures. It was a test match between South Africa and Australia, rugby of course, and it was played at Ellis Park. And these two opposing players, they bumped into each other, and what I ended up photographing and capturing appeared to be these two big, bulky rugby players kissing. It's just the way that picture ended up appearing. It's just a wonderful picture. I framed it for my mom. It's there at my mother's house. She likes that picture. I had to make her understand. She was asking me, "Where's the ball? What are they doing?" I'm like, "No." And that picture does not have the ball in the context. It's just these two guys coming together and it appeared that they're kissing. So it's one of my favorite ultimate pictures. Yeah.
This sounds amazing. And I actually love the fact that you're saying that the ball is not in there, because in sports photography, that one time I tried sports photography, everyone was like, it's very important to have it all in the frame. And now I'm hearing this picture, I'm like, nah, this is perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm a news photographer. There's always pressure, right? You both know this. But to me, it seems like that it's even more in sports photography to really get the shot. So what do you think makes a great photograph? Does the picture have to have the ball in it, for instance? What makes a real good photograph?
For me, a great sports photo involves, telling a story in one. Remember, I come from a photojournalistic background, so action photography is great. Shooting two rugby players tackling each other, that's great with the ball there. I mean, when you cover football, two players running next to each other and kicking the ball or running after the ball, action shots are great. But for me personally, what makes a great sports photograph involves the following. I'll make an example of what I mean. As you guys well know, that I'm busy covering a one-day international cricket match between South Africa and Australia. And it's moments that I'll look out for to try to get key moments in one picture. So I managed to get a picture of a player that has just been sort of bowled out. And in that same picture, you have three elements. A player that is dejected, you have the stumps on the ground, and you have a player that knocked him out. He's jumping up in the air and celebrating. So you have all those aspects in one picture. That to me tells a story, of the day. Not disputing the fact that an action shot is great, but for me personally, it's about telling a story as well as you can.
Yeah, and it seems the way you describe this image that it's also very layered in two ways, like photographically, but also because there's so much happening that has layers too.
Yes. The way that I captured that picture, it told the story of the day, because the player that is celebrating, his team ended up winning. And the guy that's the player that is dejected, his team ended up losing. So that picture really, really captured the events of the day.
Yeah, this sounds like a beautiful image. Isabel, what makes a good sports photograph?
I think it was definitely an image that makes a reaction to the viewer, and I think it's a picture that transfers you to the ground, like where the picture has taken, like you can smell the grass, you can feel the sweat of the player. The grass is kicking out or the sweat is dropping, and you got these players, or the complicity between the players. It doesn't have to be an action, as Phil say. I agree. It could be like, it could have a reaction from the ground that adds to the picture a lot. Like I have quite a few that players reacting to a goal, and then the other player in the foreground looking sad or dejected, and then a flag flying behind. So you kind of have context in between everything together. The three elements relate to each other, and that makes a good picture, because it's not just about taking a single picture of action. There's so many action pictures there, but it has to be something else. There has to be a few more elements to come together and make that picture stand out, I think. And I think coming from news, I think you have a good eye to not just looking at the ball, but also keeping an eye on the other elements around. That makes the picture better.
Yeah, and I think also with the amount of sports photograph, for instance, on the wires, it really has to stand out, right? And the things you're now describing make them stand out. And it's so important in the sea of images to stand out.
Yeah, right. There's so many pictures coming through the wires. There's so many photographers. We all file it live through our cameras. And I don't know if I would like to be in the position of the picture person who has to decide which one to go on the paper.
Yeah, there's a lot coming in. It's true. That being said, the importance also, I mean, from filing from the camera, for instance, the kit, what do you use? Phil, let's start with you.
In my kit bag right now, I've got the Canon mirrorless R3. I've got the Canon 400 millimeter 2.8. I've got also the Canon 1DX Mark III as a backup. It's a DSLR. Also, I've got the Canon 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8. That's one of my favorite lenses. I'll tell you why. When I'm covering rugby matches, almost all photographs that I have of a player scoring a try, it was taken with that lens, because the action tends to be a bit closer to where we are seated, where we are positioned. So this lens comes in very, very handy to shoot images like that. So that is what's in my kit right now.
Nice. And the I'm just curious, the extra camera you have, the backup camera, do you set it up remotely somewhere or do you shoot with both?
Look, no. I have it on me. It will be on me.
You have it on you,
the side. Yeah, I definitely have. It's not like it's all zipped up in the bag. No, it's just there because 80% of the time I'll use the R3 and combination of the R3 and the 400 2.8. You know, that's capturing the action and that's capturing all the key moments in the field. And I'll use the other one, just for everything else.
I see. And Isabel, what about you?
Yeah, a bit similar to Phil. When I do football, I have always my 2 R3s with me, 170, 200 for the close-ups and more like shooting goals, celebrations, and then the 400 2.8 with the other R3 and the monopod because it's quite heavy to carry the whole thing, the whole game. So you have to kind of... It takes practice, and I don't have big shoulders to carry all these gears sometimes. But you shoot in. I mean, everybody who's done the sport does this, so it's nothing new. But you shoot in with the monopod 400 and 70-200. If you can, you have another one for a wider angle, maybe 24 mil for if they come really close to you to celebrate. And if you can, also, I have a all 1DX. That I feel like I can afford if it gets kicked out of the goal.
Yeah.
And I have it remotely behind the goal.
You set it up and then it shoots.
So I've bit of everything.
Wow. You have
you need as much as you can. You're never short of gear.
It sounds like both of you are not short of gear, especially with these long lenses, and they're so amazing. I mean, they're heavy, but they really are amazing.
They're lighter and lighter. My 400 is a Model 3 and it's such a difference from the other ones before.
Improved.
It really makes a
difference.
difference.
It improved so much. Yeah, they're amazing gear. They're so sharp and it's wonderful what they shoot. So do you ever share pictures with players or doesn't it work that way?
Look, with me it works this way. I don't particularly have personal relationship with players, but because we are photographing the same people over time, there'll be those subtle moments where a player has gotten used to you. They'll give you a wink or two of acknowledgement, or they'll give you like a wave or two, just to acknowledge the fact that, look, we don't personally know each other, but we know each other. If you get my meaning, they'll acknowledge you. So that's as far as it goes with me, and I'll acknowledge back.
Yeah. But that's actually perfect to have because you never know. Maybe they will run towards you one day knowing like he's there. Isabel, is it the same for you?
I don't think I have the luck of having any wink from any players yet.
You never know where it can go.
These guys are like Premier League and La Liga and international players. I think we kind of blend behind the cameras a lot. But maybe the trick is to sit down closer you can to the photographer's club, because I guess they definitely have a good relation established between all the players and these guys and girls. And so if you're close to them, you get more chances that they might run onto you and they might look towards you. But I mean, I think playing at that kind of level, they're like in another league. They don't really look at us much.
Busy with their own thing.
We're just a thing behind these lenses. And they got so much to deal with.
That's true. They have to they have to really be focused, of course. Very much. So let's jump onto something else, because I know from this industry that inclusion, I mean, it's very much still a topic of conversation in sports photography and actually also in news. A study in 2021 found that sports media remains overwhelmingly white and male. And I'm extremely glad that our listeners get to hear from you both today, because you are really defying that stereotype. But I also recognize that the journey to now may have thrown up some challenges. I'm a female photographer myself, so Isabel, I kind of know how that is like. Do you recognize this too? And what are the challenges, if any?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, I was like 10 years ago at least, being a young female Spanish photographer with kind of a thick accent, hopefully improved now. And crashing into this very grassroots football in London. I'm sure people look at me like, who is this person? What's he doing? But I think everybody in general has been quite helpful and friendly, even though I think I've never been feeling discriminated or anything like that for being a woman in the sports. The contrary, everybody has been quite helpful, and I always put a smile to get through things, so I think that helps. And I think if you, you don't have to prove anything to anyone, but just to yourself. But I think if you prove that you can shoot as well as them or better.
That's, I like that. I like that.
Or better. So I think you just have to do the job. As long as you do the job, people respect you for what you do, not for if you're a woman or man or which color you are. I think it's just be good at what you are and believe that you can do it and be confident, which takes time for me. But definitely, I think just do what you love and go for it. Don't be like, oh, they're gonna look at me because I'm the only woman. Like that happens to me every week, and we might be 2 or 3 women, if any. Sometimes it's only me, but that really doesn't bother me. Like it's all friends and colleagues, and there's nothing to worry really.
That's beautifully said. I'm really happy to hear that it's also a supportive environment. Yeah,
definitely. They're really, really helpful. People who are very experienced try to help you as much as they can. If you ask questions, it's all quite friendly environment.
And Phil, has it ever been difficult for you to make your mark on this industry, to kind of start out?
Look, for me, it's kind of different. I mean, given the past history and the South African context, it is true. I do agree, and I experience it, that in a typical rugby match in South Africa, 80% of photographers that are covering that particular match are white, fairly older males. And the difficulties with a young, black up-and-coming photographer, it would be when you apply for accreditation to cover certain events, I found that I never got really the quick responses and whatever I wanted to the assistant that I needed in order for me to do my work. I sometimes had to have other my colleagues to assist in writing letters and all of that so that I can get approval for accreditation. And in the South African context, I kind of like have to mention the following. The difficulties with me specifically came also from the fans themselves, I don't know if with Isabel, when you enter the stadium, here is this young black photographer. I'm holding big cameras and big gear, and I would get questions from white supporters asking me, "Hey, what are you doing with those big cameras?" And it seems like they don't comprehend.
It's like, what do you think?
It seems like they don't comprehend that actually young black photographers do this as well. And it's difficult for them to understand that you are also a professional and you are also a photographer. So that's the South African context, that's where we come from. Those are the little difficulties that I encountered. But look, experience, you get to, deal with this and accept it and just move on, and I kid you not, it still happens today. If you go to a stadium and I'm walking around with these heavy cameras, I will get, funny questions and all of that from spectators saying, "Hey, what are you doing with those big cameras?"
Wow.
And funny enough, I even have a answer for that. I'll say to them, no, I'm just holding them for this other white photographer. And they will be so happy to hear that. They'll be so happy to hear that. Oh, okay, no, you can go. It's like I need permission to be here. In my context, that's the kind of difficulties that I experienced.
Yeah. Oh, unbelievable. Yeah. So, from both of your experience, because you've both been doing this for a couple of years now, what would be your advice to someone wanting to start out in sports photography? Isabel, let's start with you.
It might look like a big world to get into, but if you put the effort and don't have to do the big games to start. Everybody wants to do the big games, like we all want to, but even local football could be really rewarding as well. Like you could find really good expressions and action from people who play football around the corner from your house, and that will really give you the experience as well as the Premier League one. So I think just go for it, build up a good portfolio, and don't be afraid of putting it out and reach to people, because people are nice. They will reply to you, and you get good feedbacks, and just do what your heart tells you. Like if it's sports, go for it. Don't be scared. Just do it.
And Phil?
Look, I'll have to agree with Isabel. I mean, start with grassroots. Start in your neighborhood. Start documenting, start shooting those local, around the corner football matches. And for me, I would advise for them to be brave and not to get intimidated by anything. Because I remember when I started, we started with these little small cameras and these little lenses, and you're literally, competing with guys that are shooting with the state-of-the-art gear. And that was never a deterrent. That never stopped me from achieving what I wanted to achieve. And I would also to advise that they should know your equipment and understand how to operate. If you have a camera, if you understand how to operate your camera, the possibilities are endless. So I would urge them to not to give up and just to work their equipment and not try to compete with fellow photographers who have, big cameras. So understand your gear and work with your gear. It will do wonders for you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like driving a car. Once you know how it works, you forget about the technical part, and then you just focus on what is in front of you.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison. And also with your equipment, if you know it so well, you are literally ahead of the game. If you know more than the others, or if you know how to really work with the camera, and you know the specific settings that can make your life easier, which in sports photography I think is even more so than in news photography, it can make such a big difference in your work. And they can do more and more. Every new camera that comes out, I'm amazed. I'm like, oh, wow, the last one didn't have this. So yeah, really invest in that. That's a good advice. Have you guys seen the industry change since you started?
I mean, we touched on it a bit earlier. I mean, the industry has changed. Coming from where we come from, I remember when I started out, this was our workflow. I used to shoot especially with night games, coming to the deadlines of a newspaper. We used to have a driver that would literally stand next to me in the pitch, waiting to take my memory card and rush to the office to give it to the editor so that they can, so that they can. I would tag the pictures that I prefer, and they would just, I would have somebody in the office editing for me. Unlike now you literally send a picture via FTP. Within seconds of shooting that photograph, it'll be on the wires depending on how fast your workflow is. So I usually shoot a picture, do a voice tag on the picture. South Africa's number 4 is tackled by Australia's number 11, and I'll send this picture in real time to my editor, and within a minute or two that picture is online. So that's the dramatic change from where I started to how we operate now, and it's quite amazing. It's actually unbelievable.
What a difference! With the driver standing next to you, I can kind of see that.
That was weird.
That's amazing.
And we had to apply for accreditation for the driver, and having to explain to a national sporting federation to say, hey, here's this guy, he needs to, then they'll argue, no, this person is not a photographer, they're not working. So you have to motivate and explain the reason for that. And they ultimately understand that it's about, getting the picture printed and its deadline issues and whatnot. So it was just fun times back then.
Yeah, exactly. It's also nice that you started out in this way, right?
Yeah.
Just to now see the change.
Exactly.
It's amazing. And Isabel, what about you?
Yeah, on the technical side, definitely it's been a massive change, and pictures go on the wire as soon as you shoot them. instantly, like Phil was saying. I was thinking on the question more from like the how the industry has changed, so like for the photographers, like the diversity and all that. So I really think there's been an improvement and an effort from the news agencies and the football clubs that I can see that they're taking more women in, but a lot of the clubs I can see they're now taking on young female photographers, young photographers. So yeah, definitely a change in that, because as we say before, it was a very white, middle-aged, male-dominated industry, and I think people are quite involved now in equality and diversity to make it work and integrate more women into the sports photography, which is really good. And events like the World Cup in Australia, they just like change the perception of people from women's sports. I think a whole country is so supportive with this tournament, and the amount of people that has moved, and I think it's definitely going to make an impact in the young generations.
That's really, really beautiful that you mentioned that. So we all know that video is also making its way into the industry. It's much more popular now. Are you both also shooting video?
Look, personally, I do a bit of video. I'll find myself out on a story, and unfortunately, that's what the job demands now. You know, an agency, you sell a package. You know, there needs to be a story, there needs to be a video, there needs to be still images, and you sell that as a package. So I'll find myself sometimes, you know, at a story and there's no videographer. So I'll take some video of the event itself, and I really must say I'm open-minded. I'm not. I wasn't strictly. No. I'm just gonna do still photography and whatnot, because I'm open-minded. So I allow the space, and I got a bit of training from the videographers in the office, and they taught me the tricks of the trade. And I do a bit of video and whatnot, and I'll edit a bit. It's not perfect. It's not really. I'll do the bare minimum and the basics.
And do you do video as well, Isabel?
In the sports, it didn't happen to me that much that I had to use video, but you had to be prepared because something might suddenly happen in front of you that your agency wouldn't have a videographer, because there's only like the official cameras there, and someone might jump in the pitch or something, and maybe they're like, oh, that would have been great to have like a clip or two of these guys doing something. It happens to me more in the news that they ask you to do video, because it gives a different perspective of the story. But yeah, I think you need to be prepared for anything and don't be stubborn about, no, I'm just still photographer. Like, I think these days you just have to move on with what the trends are and just be ready to learn new skills.
And for clients, it's so important. For agencies, clients, newspapers, they're really, because they know, of course, people love to watch videos too, especially online.
Yeah, definitely. Quick videos.
Yeah, the one thing is that your work really needs to stand out. We mentioned it briefly earlier. How do you stand out? Like, are there any techniques or tricks that you could maybe share with the listeners that they could use to make sure their images stand out?
Look, for me, it's quite simple. I tend to sit on the opposite end, or where photographers are sitting. I would opt to sit in a different area, because I'm guaranteed to capture something that is unique and that is different. But sometimes it's not always up to me, you know. We get placed where to sit and all of that. But that shouldn't deter you from trying to be unique and trying to be different. Also, what I also look out for, like I explained earlier, is not only about the action itself. It's just to find a certain moment or a certain emotion that happens within a particular match. Like I made the example of the cricket, where you have three elements in one picture. So for me, it's not necessarily only concentrating on shooting action shots. It's just to get a particular moment out of a particular match. It could be two opposing coaches fighting each other. You know, they're arguing and about a certain decision from a referee. Make sure that you capture that, you know, study the match, and the rest will come naturally for you.
Yeah, that's a good advice too, to really study the match, to know what's going on. That's a good advice. Isabel?
Yeah, I agree with Phil on that. Like we said before, it's not just about having the ball in the picture, it's about the other elements that bring context and emotion to the image. But I'll say something like, in tennis, because I've been talking about football, but like I started doing tennis last year, and I realized every player has their own thing. Like before they hit the ball, they will do this gesture, and every player has something. And I really love kind of memorizing what this player doing, like what's the thing. Like there will be one that puffs his cheeks very, very strongly before hitting the ball, and there will be another one who always touch his forehead or do something with the hand. So it's just getting to know a bit of these particular things of every player. I think also helps to be a bit ahead.
That's interesting, because when you're looking through the lens, you see so much more, right? You're so close up to them. So Isabel, you shoot both football and tennis. What would you say are the differences?
Well, yeah, obvious difference is the actual place where it happens. Like you have a football stadium with 40,000 people, loud shouting, loads of players in front of you, while in tennis you have two players, very quiet. That's why the Canon mirrorless cameras come so handy, because you don't interrupt the game. It's like no one will know that you're shooting, but you're actually taking thousands of frames. And yeah, it's just the tension between these two players. Like it's almost like if you could cut the tension with like the eye lines between the two players, and you could cut the tension there, and then just trying to capture that and all the emotions that they have between the two of them.
Yeah, it's I would say almost more meditative, although you have to constantly concentrate, but because it's so quiet, total different atmosphere, can imagine.
Yeah.
So we're about to end this lovely episode. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I learned a lot, so maybe I will try one day again to do some sport photography.
Go for it.
No, I
Please
won't.
do.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, dear. Thanks so much. But before we go, I really want to ask you, what is next? Like, are there any big sporting events coming up in your calendar? What are you excited about? What's happening?
Yeah. With me, I've got the incoming cricket test tour of India in South Africa. And as you know, cricket in India is huge. So India will be touring South Africa in December, and I'm most definitely going to cover that incoming test. And for me, my ultimate event that I would want to cover is definitely the Rugby World Cup. Crossing fingers that
Yes.
I will be able to do so in no time at all.
Oh, that would be amazing. Especially as a South African, I can imagine that's just, the whole country is upside down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And Isabel, what about you?
Well, my dream will be the Olympics next year in Paris. That'll be
Yes, I can imagine.
dream come true. When I started in pictures in the local paper, it was the summer of 2012 in London. So if that was too early for me to join the Olympics at that moment, but if I could make it for the next year, that would be like a dream come true. And kind of preparing myself to do more different sports at the moment. So trying to do more gymnastics, athletics,
That's great.
To be ahead.
Yeah, to diversify that. That's very interesting to do.
Yeah, to diversify my portfolio. I think you can learn from every sport to give
Absolutely.
you something different. So
Well, beautiful. Thanks so much, both of you, for sharing all your knowledge with the listeners and with me. And thanks for your time. And I'm looking forward to see all your beautiful images in the future.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ilvy. Thank you to your listeners as well.
You've been listening to Shutter Stories, a Canon podcast, and thank you to my guest Isabel and Phill, and to you for listening. Come back next month for another episode, and in the meantime, don't be a stranger. There are loads of brilliant ways to stay in contact with us in the podcast description. And we also love to hear your feedback, so rate it 5 stars on the platform you listen on and spread the word with all your favorite photographers, filmmakers and content creators. Until next time.